Lyra walked through the dark alleys of the colony city, her feet heavy with fear. Every shadow looked alive. Every sound made her heart race. She knew where she was going, but she wished she could turn back. The summons from the syndicate was not something anyone ignored. To refuse was death. To obey was worse. The city above was bright with towers and markets, but here, in the lower levels, there was no light, only smoke, rust, and whispers of broken people. Lyra had grown up here, chained to a debt her family left behind. She never had a choice. Her life was measured in numbers she could never pay. And tonight, the debt collectors had called her in. Her hands shook as she touched the heavy metal door at the end of the alley. She breathed once, twice, then pushed it open. Inside was a wide chamber filled with smoke and low lights. The air stank of oil, sweat, and fear. 10 men stood waiting, each with eyes hungry and cruel. Behind them sat the syndicate boss. Lounging in his chair, he smiled, showing teeth too sharp to be human. "Lyra," he said, his voice soft but cutting. "You have been running from your debt too long." She shook her head. "I have worked, I have paid." "Not enough," he interrupted, his hand waving lazily. "Tonight you repay in full." 10 debts for 10 men, all in one night. Her legs nearly gave way. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. She looked at the men, each stronger than her, each ready. There was no escape. The door behind her slammed shut. The walls seemed to close in, the chamber breathing like a monster waiting to swallow her. The first man stepped forward, his boots loud on the metal floor. Lyra's heart pounded so hard she thought it would break her ribs. She tried to back away, but 2 others grabbed her arms. Holding her still, the boss laughed. "Do not fight, girl. You know this is the only way." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. She would not give them the pleasure of seeing her break. For a moment, silence stretched across the room. Heavy and cruel, the men watched. The boss smiled. Lyra trembled. The first man raised his hand, not to strike, but to claim. And in that instant, the chamber shook. A loud siren wailed from outside. The walls rattled. The lights flickered. Everyone froze. The boss narrowed his eyes. "What is this?" he muttered. The first man stopped, his hand still in the air. Lyra's heart beat faster. Not from fear this time, but from confusion. Something was happening, something outside the syndicate's control. Then the sound came, deep and powerful engines. Not from the colony, not from the syndicate. A ship, landing close. The men looked at one another, uncertain. The boss stood from his chair, his smile gone. "No ships land here without my word," he hissed. "Check it," he ordered, but his voice carried doubt. Lyra's chest rose and fell quickly. Hope? Could it be hope? Or another kind of terror? No one dared to move yet. The chamber was trapped between 2 dangers: the demand of the debt and the unknown sound outside. The first man growled and tried to grab her again, but this time the door slammed open. A rush of cold night air swept into the chamber, and there, in the doorway, stood a figure, tall, straight, calm, not alien, not syndicate, a human. Gasps spread through the room. Humans were rare here. Whispered about, feared, sometimes hated. No one expected one to walk into the heart of the syndicate. Lyra froze, her fear turning into something else. What was he doing here? Who was he? The men shifted uneasily, their cruel confidence shaken. The boss leaned forward, his sharp teeth flashing. "A human," he said slowly. "What business do you have in my house?" The human did not flinch. His eyes moved over the room, over the 10 men, the boss, and finally to Lyra. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Lyra felt the weight in his gaze. Not cruel, not hungry, but something different. Something she had never seen before. It was not pity, it was not lust. It was something that almost felt like protection. The boss snapped his fingers, and 2 men moved to block the doorway. The human did not move, he simply stood. His voice, when he spoke, was steady, calm. "I am here for her." The chamber froze again. Every man stared. The boss blinked in disbelief. Lyra's breath caught, for the first time that night. The fear in her chest loosened just a little. The night was no longer only hers to survive, it had changed. Something had entered that no one expected, a human, standing against 10 men and a syndicate. And for the first time, Lyra wondered if her story was not ending, but beginning. The chamber hung in silence. No one moved, no one spoke. The human's words echoed through the smoky air, heavy and impossible. I am here for her. Lyra stared. Her breath caught in her chest. She could not believe what she had heard. No one ever spoke for her. No one ever claimed her except in cruelty. But this human had entered the lion's den and spoken with calm fire. The boss tilted his head, his sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. You are bold, human, he hissed. But boldness is not power, and this is not your world. He motioned to the men. Remove him. 2 of the 10 stepped forward, their bodies large and heavy, their fists clenched, their eyes cold. The human did not move, his gaze steady. Lyra felt her throat tighten. Part of her wanted to shout, to warn him, but no sound left her lips. The first man swung his arm, aiming to knock the human down. The blow never landed. The human caught the strike with one hand, his grip iron. Gasps rose from the room. The second man lunged, but the human twisted, pulling the first into the second. Both stumbled, crashing against the wall. The chamber erupted in noise. The boss snarled. The men shouted. But the human did not flinch. He stepped forward, slow, controlled. Like every motion was planned. His eyes returned to Lyra, and for the first time in her life, she felt something she had never known: safety. The boss slammed his clawed hand against the arm of his chair. Enough, he barked. His voice cut through the noise, pulling the men back. The 2 who had attacked the human groaned on the floor, too stunned to rise. The others hesitated. Their confidence cracked. The boss narrowed his eyes, studying the human. You risk much, human, he said. This girl is nothing. Less than nothing. Her life is mine. Why do you care? The human's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. Because no life belongs to you. He paused, his words sharp and clear. She owes you nothing. Lyra felt her heart tremble. How could he say that? How could he stand here and speak such things? No one defied the syndicate. No one ever challenged the boss. Yet this human did so without fear. The boss leaned back in his chair, his cruel smile returning. You speak of debts you do not understand, he said. She is bound by law, by blood, by contract. His voice dripped with poison. She belongs here until the last coin is paid. The human's eyes narrowed. Then the contract is broken tonight, he said. His words struck the chamber like a thunderclap. The men growled, shifting closer. But something in his voice made them hesitate. Lyra's hands shook at her sides, her mind spun. She wanted to believe him, but fear whispered louder. This was the syndicate. This was power she had never escaped. Could one human truly break it? The boss sneered, his sharp teeth flashing. You think you can take her, human, he said. You think you can stand against 10 men, against me? He rose from his chair, his shadow stretching long across the chamber. You are a fool, and fools die quickly here. The human did not answer. He only stepped closer to Lyra, standing between her and the 10. The room pulsed with danger, every second heavy with threat. The men shifted, some gripping knives, some cracking their knuckles. They were waiting for the command, waiting for blood. But the boss did not speak the command. Not yet. His eyes were on the human, measuring, testing, and perhaps, deep inside, fearing, for the first time in many years. Someone had walked into his chamber and spoken without trembling. Someone had resisted his control. Someone had taken his power. Even for a moment, the boss leaned forward, his voice low and sharp. Tell me your name. Human. The chamber held its breath. The human's gaze did not waver. My name is Elias, he said, and I do not fear you. Lyra's heart leapt at the sound of his name. It was simple, human, yet it felt like a weapon. The men shifted uneasily, their earlier cruelty shaken by this stranger's calm. And for the first time in the chamber, it was not the syndicate who controlled the air. It was the human, Elias. The boss's smile thinned, his sharp teeth no longer shining with victory. He snapped his fingers, and the men stepped back. "Very well," he said slowly. "Let us see how long your courage lasts." His voice promised that the night was not finished, that the danger had only begun. Lyra stood frozen, her body weak, but her mind alive. She had expected this night to be the end. But with the arrival of Elias, the story had changed. The debt was no longer only hers to carry. Something greater had entered her world, something that felt impossible, hope. The chamber still hummed with tension. Lyra's breath came in quick bursts, her hands trembling at her sides. Elias stood tall in the center of the room. Unbroken, unshaken, the boss narrowed his eyes, his sharp teeth flashing in the dim light. There was something about this human that unsettled even him. No outsider entered the syndicate's heart and lived. No one dared, no one tried. But Elias had walked in as if the darkness did not scare him, as if the walls of power and cruelty meant nothing. And now the air felt different, as if the syndicate's control was cracking. Piece by piece, one of the men spat on the floor, his anger boiling. "Boss, let us tear him apart," he growled. The others muttered, fists clenching, blades flashing under the lights. But the boss raised a hand, stopping them. His eyes stayed locked on Elias, sharp and searching. "You are no ordinary fool," the boss said slowly. "Who are you really? And why step into fire for this girl?" His words cut the air like blades. Lyra looked at Elias, waiting for his answer. Her heart beat like a drum, part fear, part something new. Something she did not understand. Elias did not move at first. His gaze drifted across the chamber, to the smoke, to the men, to the boss. And finally back to Lyra. "She is not fire," he said, his voice steady. "She is a life, and a life is not a debt." The boss laughed, sharp and cruel, his teeth gleaming. "You speak like a priest, human, but your words are weak. This world is ruled by contracts, and contracts are chains." He leaned forward, his claws tapping against the arm of his chair. "Unless, of course, you are hiding something." The chamber stirred, whispers passing between the men. Elias's jaw tightened, but he gave no answer. Lyra's eyes widened, her breath sharp. Was he hiding something? Who was he truly? Why would a human risk his life for her? Someone worthless in the eyes of the syndicate. The boss's grin widened. "Yes, you carry a secret," he hissed. "I can smell it on you, human. You are not here only for her." The words struck the room with weight. Even Lyra felt them in her chest, heavy and cold. Could it be true? Could Elias have another reason? Elias's silence was louder than any denial. He stood still, his face unreadable, but in his eyes there was fire. Not rage, not fear, but something stronger. Purpose. The boss leaned back, satisfied with his guess. "Perhaps you seek to challenge me. Perhaps you seek to steal something more." He waved a hand toward Lyra. Dismissive. "She is nothing but you." "You are dangerous, too dangerous to walk free," the men growled. Their anger rising again. Knives gleamed, fists cracked. Boots scraped against the floor. Lyra's stomach knotted, her body frozen. Was this the moment? Would they all strike at once? Would Elias fall, leaving her alone again? But Elias spoke, his voice quiet, steady, cutting through the noise like steel. "You fear me," he said. The chamber froze. No one had ever spoken to the boss like that. Not in front of his men, not in his chamber. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She felt the shift, the balance of power tipping again. The boss rose slowly from his chair, towering, his shadow stretching long. "Fear you," he hissed. "I do not fear anyone." His claws glinted in the dim light. His eyes burned with cold fury. "You will regret stepping into my world." Elias's gaze did not waver. "I did not step into your world," he said. "You stepped into mine when you chained her life to numbers and lies." His voice carried no anger, only truth, heavy and unshakable. Lyra's knees weakened. She had never heard words like these. No one had ever spoken for her. No one had ever stood for her. Her whole life had been chains. And now here was a stranger, a human, breaking them with words alone. Her chest ached. Her heart burned with something she could not name. It was more than hope, it was something alive. The boss snarled, his patience gone. "Enough," he roared, his voice shaking the chamber. "Kill him." The 10 men surged forward. Blades raised, fists tight, rage in their eyes. Lyra gasped, her body frozen, her voice trapped in her throat. Elias moved, not with panic, not with fear, but with purpose. His steps were steady, his hands ready. And as the first man reached him, Elias struck, fast and precise. The fight had begun. The chamber became a storm of movement. Clashing metal, heavy blows, shouts and curses, but in the center of it all, Elias stood like stone, moving with strength that seemed impossible. Every strike was clean, every motion controlled. He did not stumble. He did not falter. Lyra watched, her heart pounding. This was not chance. This was not luck. Elias was more than a wanderer, more than a stranger. He had come here for a reason. And though she did not yet know it, that reason was tied to her. Asterisk. The chamber shook with violence. The 10 men surged like a tide, their rage filling the air. Knives flashed, boots slammed, fists swung, but Elias moved through them like a shadow with weight. The first attacker rushed with a blade. Elias caught his wrist, twisted, and sent the knife clattering to the floor. He struck once, sharp and fast, and the man fell gasping. The second charged from the side, swinging heavy fists. Elias ducked low, his movement smooth, his elbow striking hard into the man's ribs. The sound of bone cracking echoed across the chamber. Lyra's breath caught. She had never seen fighting like this. Not wild, not desperate, but controlled, calm, almost planned. Every move Elias made was clean, no wasted motion. It was as if he knew what each man would do before they did it. The others hesitated, circling, but hesitation turned to fear, and fear turned to anger. 3 attacked at once, blades cutting the smoky air. Elias stepped forward, close enough that their strikes missed. His fist struck the first, his boot swept the second. His shoulders slammed into the third. All 3 collapsed, groaning on the floor. Gasps filled the chamber. The men had fought for years under the syndicate, trained to be ruthless, yet one human had broken them in moments. Lyra's heart pounded, her fear twisting into awe. Who was this man? Why was he here? The boss's sharp teeth glinted as he leaned forward. His claws tapped the arm of his chair. "You fight well, Elias," he hissed. "Too well. No wanderer moves like that." His eyes narrowed, filled with suspicion. "You are trained, but not as a soldier, not as a thug." He leaned closer, his voice dripping poison. "You are something else, aren't you?" Elias did not answer. He only stood tall, his breath steady, his fists ready, but Lyra saw it, a flicker in his eyes. The boss had struck close to the truth. Her heart twisted, confusion and wonder tearing at her. Why would someone like him come here? Why would he risk everything for her? She was no one, just a girl chained to debt. And yet, his presence shattered everything she believed. The boss laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Do you see it, girl?" he said, his voice echoing. "This human does not fight for you, he fights for something else. Maybe he uses you, maybe he hides behind you. You are nothing to him." Lyra's chest tightened, her hope trembling. Was it true? Her eyes searched Elias, desperate, but his gaze met hers, steady, calm, and in that gaze she felt no lie. Not use, not cruelty, not hunger, only something she could not name. Something strong. The boss growled, anger flashing in his eyes. "Enough games," he snapped. "Take them both." The remaining men roared, gathering their strength, but Elias stepped forward, placing himself fully between Lyra and danger. His voice cut through the noise, steady and sharp. "No one touches her." The chamber froze. It was not shouted, not screamed. It was a promise, the kind of promise that carried weight. Even the men hesitated, their fury clashing with the strange. Rising fear, Lyra felt her knees weaken, her breath trembling. She had been invisible all her life, a shadow in chains. Now someone had spoken for her, claimed her not as property, not as debt, but as life. Her chest ached, her eyes burned. This was not a story she ever thought she would live, the boss snarled, his claws scratching deep lines into the arm of his chair. You speak like you have power. Elias, he spat. But power here is mine, and you will bleed before the night is done. Elias's eyes did not waver. Maybe, he said quietly, but not before I make sure she walks free. The words cut deep. Sharper than any blade, even the men shifted back, the certainty in his voice stronger than their courage. Lyra's tears blurred her vision, but her heart blazed like fire. Someone believed she deserved freedom. Someone believed she was more than dead. And that someone was a stranger who fought like he had waited his whole life for this night. The fight was not finished. The danger was not gone. But the chamber was no longer the same. Elias had shifted its weight, breaking the unbreakable. And in the smoke and chaos, Lyra felt something bloom. A story that was no longer about chains, but about the first spark of freedom. The chamber smelled of sweat and smoke. The fallen men groaned on the floor, their knives scattered, their breath broken. Elias stood firm, his chest rising and falling with calm strength. Lyra pressed against the cold wall, her hands trembling, her eyes locked on him. The boss leaned forward, his claws tapping against the chair. His sharp teeth gleamed in the half-light, his eyes narrow with fury and curiosity. You fight like a man with training, he hissed, but fists alone cannot free her. You are outnumbered, outmatched, and yet you still stand. Why? Elias's gaze was steady, his voice calm. Because she does not belong to you, he paused, his words heavy. And because your contracts are lies, the boss laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Lies, human. These contracts built my empire. They chain lives, they feed me wealth. They are the law here. His claws scraped the metal of the chair, sparks flashing. No one questions them, no one dares. Elias stepped closer, his presence filling the chamber. I dare, he said, his voice cut through the smoke like a blade. You think you own her debt, but you don't. Lyra's breath caught, her heart racing. The words sounded impossible, too bold, too dangerous, but Elias spoke them as if they were truth carved in stone. The boss sneered, his sharp teeth flashing. And why should I listen to you? His voice dripped with mockery, but there was tension in his eyes. This human was not breaking, not bending, and worse, he was turning the chamber against him. Word by word, Elias raised his voice, steady but strong. Because I offer you something more. The men stirred, glancing at one another, whispers spreading. Even Lyra frowned, confused more. What could he possibly mean? The boss tilted his head, suspicion flashing. Speak, human. What bargain do you bring? Elias's jaw tightened, but his eyes did not waver. I carry something you cannot buy. Something worth more than 10 lives, more than 1,000 debts. His words struck the chamber like thunder. The men leaned in, curiosity mixing with greed. Lyra's stomach twisted, fear creeping back. What was he doing? What did he mean? The boss's claws tapped louder, his grin wide. You play a dangerous game. Elias, he hissed. If you promise me treasure, I will take it and still keep her. Elias shook his head, his voice cutting sharp. No, this is not treasure you can steal. It is knowledge. The chamber fell silent. The men froze. Even the groans of the defeated seemed to vanish. Knowledge, not wealth, not gold, but something heavier. The boss's grin faltered, his eyes narrowing. Knowledge, he repeated slowly. What knowledge could a human carry that I, master of this city, do not already own? Elias's eyes flickered, for a moment the fire inside them visible. There are forces moving beyond this world, he said. Empires that will burn through colonies like yours. And when they come, your contracts, your wealth, your power will mean nothing. His words rang cold, heavy with truth. Lyra's chest tightened. She felt it, the weight in his voice, the promise of something larger. Elias was not only fighting for her, he was fighting because he knew what was coming. The syndicate, the boss, this chamber, they were small against it. But why would he say this here? Why risk revealing it? The boss's claws scraped harder, carving deep lines in his chair. You threaten me with stories, he spat. You speak of empires and war. But I see no armies, I see one man, one human, standing in my chamber, bleeding for a girl not worth the air she breathes. Elias did not flinch. You see one man, he said, but one man is enough. The boss's grin sharpened again, his anger and amusement twisting together. You offer me warnings, but I deal in chains, not in prophecies. He leaned closer, his claws shining. So here is my bargain. Elias, you walk out alive and I keep her. His voice was poison, a trap disguised as mercy. Lyra's heart dropped, her body cold. Would Elias leave her? Would he take the chance to live? She wanted to scream, to speak, but fear chained her throat. Elias's voice broke the silence, calm and final. No, the word was soft, but it hit the chamber like thunder. I walk out with her, or I don't walk out at all. Lyra's eyes burned, her breath trembling. Her whole life she had been invisible, worthless. Now a human had spoken the words she never dared to dream, not as a promise of chains, but as a vow of freedom. The boss's eyes flared with rage, his claws slicing the air. You will die for her, he roared. His voice shook the chamber, the walls trembling with the sound. Elias stood tall, his gaze steady. Then so be it, he said. And in that moment, Lyra knew the truth. This stranger had not come only to fight. He had come because her life mattered. And for the first time, she believed it too. Asterisk, the boss's roar shook the chamber. The men answered it with blades drawn, teeth bared, fists clenched. Lyra's heart pounded as the air thickened with rage and smoke. But Elias did not step back. He moved forward, slow and calm. As if danger itself bowed to him, the first attacker rushed with a howl. Elias slipped aside, striking once at the base of his neck. The man collapsed before he even hit the floor. Another swung a chain, sparks flying as it cracked the air. Elias caught it mid-swing, wrapped it around the man's arm, and pulled. The thug spun, crashing into two others, their cries echoing in the chamber. Lyra's eyes widened. This was not just skill. This was something else. Every strike was too precise. Every move too fast, too certain. It was like Elias had fought this battle before, as if he knew each man's weakness before they lifted their hands. The boss snarled, his claws slicing through the air. Do not fear him, he barked. He is only flesh. But the men were already shaken. 5 had fallen, groaning on the floor. The others circled, hesitant, blades trembling in their grip. Fear cracked their anger. And Lyra saw it, the unthinkable men of the syndicate. Afraid, Elias turned, his voice low but clear. You still think this is about her debt? His gaze cut to the boss, sharp as a blade. This is about you. The chamber froze. Even Lyra's breath stopped in her throat. Her eyes darted from Elias to the boss. What did he mean? What tie lay hidden between them? The boss laughed, but his laughter was too sharp, too forced. You speak like you know me. Human, he hissed. You know nothing of me, nothing of my rule. Elias's jaw tightened. I know enough, he said. His eyes burned with fire, his voice steady. I know you broke lives, not only hers, but others before her. Long before. Lyra's chest tightened, her mind racing. Was it true? Did Elias come here because of her? Or because of some older wound? The thought cut deep. Fear and hope clashing inside her. The boss rose from his chair, his claws scratching deep lines into the armrests. You dare accuse me, he spat. I have ruled this city for decades. I have chained thousands, and no one has ever stood against me. Elias's voice carried no tremor. You are wrong, he said. Someone has. The boss froze, his eyes narrowing for a heartbeat. Silence gripped the chamber. Lyra felt her blood run cold. Elias was not just fighting for her. He was fighting for something older, something personal. The men growled and charged again, but Elias met them with the same impossible precision. One swung high. Elias ducked low, striking his knee and dropping him in a scream. Another rushed from behind, but Elias spun, his fist cracking across the man's jaw. Each motion was swift, exact, devastating. He never missed, never wasted a breath, Lyra's hands trembled as she watched. This was not just strength, it was something sharper. Every move told a story. A man shaped by battles far beyond this world. She realized then, Elias was no wanderer, no accident. He had come here with purpose, a purpose that somehow tied to her. The boss hissed, fury burning in his eyes. "Enough," he roared. "You think you are strong, human, but strength fades, your blood will spill. Your bones will break." Elias's gaze locked on him. Unshaken. "Then try," he said. His voice was calm, almost quiet, but it carried across the chamber like thunder. The last two men rushed, desperate, blades flashing. Elias moved faster, his body a blur. He disarmed one with a twist of the wrist, slammed the other against the wall. Both fell, broken and gasping. And then the chamber was silent again. 10 men defeated, 10 debts shattered. Lyra's chest heaved, her eyes wide with disbelief. The impossible had happened before her eyes. The syndicate's strength lay scattered on the floor, and one human stood unbroken. The boss's grin faltered, his claws curling tighter. "You are not ordinary," he growled. His voice carried both rage and fear. "Tell me what you are. Tell me why you came here." Elias's eyes softened, just for a moment, as they flickered toward Lyra. And in that fleeting look, she saw truth, not the full truth, but a piece of it. He had come not only because of her debt, but because of something larger, something older, something that tied them together in ways she could not yet see. The boss slammed his claws into the chair, splintering wood and metal. His roar shook the chamber. "This is not over, human," he snarled. "You have won tonight, but you will not win forever." Elias stood tall, his breath steady, his fists lowered, but ready. "It only takes one night," he said. His voice was calm, final, unshakable, and in the silence that followed, Lyra felt it. The night that began as her end had turned into the night of her beginning. The chamber was silent. The 10 men lay broken on the floor, groaning and defeated. Smoke clung to the air, thick with sweat and blood. Lyra's breath trembled as she pressed against the wall, her eyes wide. She could not believe what she had seen. One human had stood against 10, and the human had not fallen. The boss still stood by his chair, his claws curled, his sharp teeth bared in fury. But there was something else in his eyes now, something Lyra had never seen before. Fear. "You," the boss hissed, his voice low, his anger trembling under it. "You are not just a wanderer, not just a fool with fists. You are something more." His claws scratched deep into the wood of the chair, splinters falling to the ground. "Tell me what you are, Elias. Tell her what you hide." Lyra's chest tightened, her heart pounding. Her gaze darted to Elias, waiting, desperate for truth. Elias's eyes softened, but his voice carried no weakness. "I was here before," he said. "Years ago, when I was young. I walked these same streets." The boss laughed, sharp and bitter. "Yes, tell her, human. Tell her what you were." Elias's jaw tightened, his voice steady. "I was one of his debts," he said. The words struck Lyra like a blade, her breath catching in her throat. Impossible, unthinkable, yet his eyes carried no lie. "I was a child, chained by numbers, broken by contracts," Elias continued. "I escaped, but I never forgot." The boss roared with cruel laughter, his teeth gleaming. "Yes, you escaped, but you returned to me. You walked back into my den." His grin widened, sharp as knives. "You cannot fight forever. Human, I will break you again, just as I break them all." But Elias's gaze was calm. "No," he said. "You will not break her." Lyra's breath shook, her tears burning her eyes, her mind spun, the pieces crashing together. Elias was not here by chance. He was not a savior falling from the stars. He was proof that the chains could be broken. He had lived the same darkness, and he had survived. The boss slammed his claws against the chair, splinters flying. "You think you can free her," he spat. "You think one night erases years of debt." Elias stepped closer, his voice like steel. "One night is enough," he said, "because the choice is hers." The words cut the chamber like thunder. Lyra froze, her breath sharp, her choice. The idea felt impossible, unreal. Her life had never belonged to her. It had always been chained, owned, stolen. But now Elias looked at her, his eyes steady, calm, waiting, not commanding, not demanding, but asking. The boss snarled, fury blazing in his eyes. "Do not listen, girl," he hissed. "You belong to me, you always will. You are debt. You are nothing." Lyra's body trembled, her knees weak. The old voice of fear whispered in her mind. "You are nothing, you are debt." But another voice rose louder. The voice she had never heard before tonight. "You are more, you are life." Her lips parted, her voice shaky, small, but alive. "No," she whispered, her eyes lifted, meeting the boss's rage. "I am not yours." The chamber froze. Even the fallen men gasped. Lyra's heart pounded, fear and fire colliding in her chest. She spoke again, louder this time, her voice breaking the chains. "I choose freedom," the boss roared, a sound of pure fury, his claws tearing deep into the chair. But the words were already spoken. The weight had shifted, the chains had snapped. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt the ground beneath her feet as her own. Elias stepped closer, his hand reaching to her. Not pulling, not forcing, only offering. Lyra's hand trembled, but she reached out, her fingers brushing his. The touch was small, but it carried more power than the boss's claws, more weight than any contract. It was the touch of choice. The boss's fury shook the chamber. "You will regret this," he snarled. "You will both regret this." Elias's gaze locked on him, calm and final. "Maybe," he said, "but not tonight." The chamber burned with silence, heavy and sharp. Elias and Lyra stood together, the broken men scattered, the boss trembling with rage. And though the night was not safe, though the future was uncertain, one truth blazed brighter than fear. Lyra was free. The story that began with chains ended with choice, and the choice was hers.